without putting this on. So, like always, I'm just going to wait a few moments, see who's popping on, if you can hear me. Laura, awesome. Hi. Welcome. If you could give me a thumbs up. Oh, we can hear. Awesome. Great. I'm going to wait a couple moments. Linda. Hi. So this is a fun topic to dive into this evening. So many, oh, hi Tracy. Thank you for all of your support and love. Hi Linda. And, because we're going to kind of demystify what working with timelines is, because we're always working with timelines in terms of choices in our lives. So I'll go over when we say working with timelines, what that means from my perspective, a psychic intuitive perspective. So there's a lot of juicy information on quantum realities and all sorts of things that this from more of a science perspective, which I highly recommend. It's fascinating. I usually listen to them. My mind doesn't quite remember the details, but this is from working with timelines from a intuitive psychic perspective, and what I've been working with for well over a decade. More than a decade. I'm getting up there. Oh, yay. Hi, Ivana. Hi, Joyce. Hi, Marina. Miss Gail. Hey, Jessica. Carrie. So this comes from working from the intuitive psychic perspective. So again, like you can look up quantum realities and how that works from the quantum physics perspective. This is from my experience, especially working as a psychic and in the psychic world, when I was really just in that pretty thickly and doing psychic fairs and tours in California. My strong point has always been precognition, and that's been precognition since I was a little girl, meaning that I would get a flash or I would know something before it happened. I think I've given the example before where I opened up the door. My mom was having a date, and she was a single mom, and I was probably 8 or 9 years old, and I opened up the door, and here's this balding tall man, and I just saw this flash, and I don't know if I would say okay, maybe a flash with big lights, but it was just this inner knowing, and I saw this picture because I'm clairvoyant, so I see different timelines. So long story short, I freaked out, and oh, hi Pam. Hi Phoenix. Is the because I just knew and I saw that my mom was going to get married. That means we were going to change coasts. So I was born on the East Coast, but I grew up on the West Coast after 11. And my poor mom, she's just 40 or less than 40 at that time. And I think she was 38, which I was oh, you're old. It's so funny. And I was you're going to get married. You're going to marry him. We're moving to California. And she's oh my God, I just want to actually be able to go on a date with someone. And her small child is freaking out and embarrassing her. Hi, Miss Sarah Jane. So the, if the Wi-Fi gets wonky, you might have to pop off. But anyways, Sarah Jane is here. So basically, those kinds of things. I was tuning into this probability, right? So, and being in precognition, and so fast forward 20 years or less than that, but I was working as a psychic more in California, and going to psychic fairs, being a part of a psychic community, going to psychic camp is really funny. But my gift was being able to gauge what timeline, what probability of something. So, and we kind of all want what we don't have, right? So I've had curly-ish hair, and I wanted straight hair. I used to straighten it all the time. And same thing in psychic world. So someone who is super clairvoyant wanted to be clear audience. Someone who is kinesthetic, can like hold an object and like know everything about the person, wanted to be, I'm forgetting what else, something else. So it's the same thing. But working with timelines. So precognition, like for me, it is the most it's the least stable in the psychic world one to be a part of. So my gift was that, and because there's free will and change. So working with timelines, meaning that we're on a certain timeline in life, right? You're already on your life timeline. There's a certain cruising momentum. So, and it's from all of your beliefs, all of your experiences, all of your lineage, like everything that's showing up in your emotions, mental body, all of that is creating this timeline that you're on. And you already have a certain momentum, right? So we're going along our life, and which is based on all of our all of those different things, beliefs, mental, cultural, all that, what we've incarnated into. And so that's timeline's going, right? But there's alternative timelines and potentials and possibilities happening, like at a vibrational shift here, like it's stacked on each other, right? So there's so many different other parallel realities. And there's sometimes when we get so where our perception becomes so open that we get those glimpses of like almost deja vu of that other timeline or parallel reality. And so when that's when it's like, oh, okay, our field is really open. So we're on this timeline, cruising in life. There's all these other potentials and possibilities. Now, however, a timeline shift. So everyone get that, what timelines are? It's the projection momentum of the walk, the path we're on in this consciousness based on our beliefs, based on our mental attitudes, lineage, cultural, blah, 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 all that. So we're on this timeline. And when it's called jumping timelines or switching timelines or collapsing timelines, same thing, different words, right? So when we collapse a certain timeline, what that basically saying is like we make a shift. Right? So we make a big shift, we collapse a certain momentum, which really means we collapse a certain consciousness. We change our consciousness enough that all this momentum from who just we are culturally, personality, all of that shifts. So that's momentum, and we have enough of a consciousness shift that actually creates a different reality, a different timeline from all that momentum. So it has to be pretty big, right? We've all been there where it's like we go to a workshop and, we feel like we're there for 8 hours or I don't know, like let's say 4 hours. We're there 4 hours, we're having these aha realizations, and they're like small aha realizations, and we're like, okay, yay, change. We go home and it lasts for a couple days, but then habit, vibration, all of that then takes hold, right? We've all probably experienced that, right? So, hey everybody. I get super ADD, so I see everyone coming in and I'm gonna say hi, but then I'll lose track. So, oh Jeff, yay, hi. So does everyone get that? Is there like thumbs up on that? So timelines, right? Momentum of our habits, our forms, beliefs. We have enough of a consciousness shift that'll change timelines, but it has to be pretty big. So when we go to like a workshop or we like get away for the weekend, right? We have that like perspective opening, and we're like, oh, we want to change this thing. We want to change a timeline, AKA change consciousness. We come home, it's for a couple days, and then we're back to that old timeline because there's all this momentum of years and years and habit bracing that one timeline. So how you jump timelines, collapse timelines, which is basically saying you create a different reality. And they talk about this. So I'm a huge Marvel comic fan, and the Endgame, right? I don't know if anyone else is a Marvel comic, but like the movies are all talking about like actual reality, but it's in the sci-fi movies or whatever. So it seems like, okay, but they're just saying the technology. Granted, we don't have the machine or somebody has probably the machine, but we don't have access to the machine to go backwards. So this is really about timelines going forward, right? So I get really excited about this. I'm going to stay on track. So when you're looking at collapsing timelines, you need a certain momentum and perseverance to truly make that change. And so this can, also be looked at as jumping timelines, collapsing timelines, can be like, I won't say new age words, but it's another word to say like truly having deep personal, spiritual, energetic, physical change. Like it doesn't happen, like that overnight. It does sometimes, and I'll get to that in a second. So going back to like psychic world, when I was doing psychic fairs and stuff in California, someone would come in, and I'm the precognition lady. And so what I would do is look at potentialities. So I would look at timelines. I would look at different ways, different energy. So if someone came in and said, I'm thinking about getting a job, one is in Michigan, one is in Florida. Can you help me? And really what I was doing, I'm looking at the probability of change happening to that path, right? So for example, so if I'm looking at two possible timelines, what I'm actually looking at is how much momentum is behind both of those timelines. So if I'm like reading someone and it's like, I'm going to maybe get a job in Florida or get a job in Michigan, and I'm reading the energy of those two places, what I'm really looking at is the person's resonance of where they are now with that shift, right? Because, for example, let's say the move in Florida is not as, like they have family in Florida. Let's say they grew up in Florida and it would be like going back to their place. Michigan is like total unknown territory, unknown, doesn't know anyone, blah, 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 blah. Now, this was years and years ago. So people are willing to change, aka jump timelines, more now than they were when our parents grew up, when our grandparents grew up, right? Think about how many job changes people have, which means also how many times people are willing to go into the unknown, because that is really what jumping a timeline is. Like when you really jump a timeline. So, the probability of being right about someone's future as a psychic is also, it's a little different. Is their probability of their willingness to change. Because that's really what it takes, is the ability to overcome that fear that says habit, habit, habit. So I got pretty good, and I'm pretty good about just feeling into, is this person in their moment, no judgment, willing? Do they have enough willpower, trust, or just the ability for adventure and curiosity to make the unknown shift? Does that make sense? So it's really less glamorous than saying like fortune teller or reader or whatever. It's just looking at knowing human behavior, being able to read someone's field, and who they are as a person. Is it someone that's constantly on the go, adventure, adventure, adventure? They're going to be shifting their possibilities and probabilities pretty quickly. If someone is like I know someone that just we're all creatures of habit. There's those people that also are like super habitual and they need their things, and it's like, I've lived in the same place, all the time. Like one of my best friends, we went to college actually here in Asheville, and she's been here since 97 and have not left. And I've been like all over the place, this and that. We're just so different personalities, and they've worked at the same job, this and that, blah, blah, blah. Works for her, and it's amazing. And my like gypsy Sagittarius self is like, what is that like? So her probability of, if I was doing a reading, of making this big shift, unless she's at a pivotal point where it's like those huge life-changing things happen, right? So it's not going to be that hard to read, right, what timeline she's going to be on. Is this all making sense? Yeah, maybe get some thumbs up or not. So when we're working with timelines, it's, there's also the life spontaneous timeline. So we all know there's deaths, there's car accidents, there's all of a sudden you're on this trajectory and, you get in a car accident and you're paralyzed. All of a sudden you have a completely different timeline because you have a completely different trajectory. And it's like we all get inspired by those stories, right? Like where it's just like some big event happens and the person has to like truly let go of all of their, the ways that they operate. And that's a huge timeline shift. And that's like life-directed timeline shift. Outside, external. I'm talking like, how do we jump timelines internally? So, timelines are happening all the time, right? So there's all these probabilities, potentialities. There's a really great, or I thought it was great, like Interstellar. I'm a big movie person. So Interstellar, is that the right teaching movie for this? Maybe not. Nope, never mind. Interstellar is still good though, about how like stacking on past lives, future lives, like all simultaneously happening at once. That's a great movie. Push. Push is like, I think it was like in like 07 or 08 or something. It's this movie of these kids that all have psychic abilities and, but the one who is clairvoyant and is precognitive, she draws in a book, but she waits because it's people's will changes all the time. So they're trying to get, it's like an adventure movie suspense, like they're trying to get to this thing, but she has to go moment to moment because in every single moment, there's so many different potentials. There's so many different ways that we can go. But because we're human of habits, most people stay in, so here's this timeline you're on, here's a timeline above you, here's a timeline below you. Most people, because of their habits, because of their mindset, because of their emotions, because of their karmic conditioning or process, stay in this area of timelines that are right above that or right below it, right? So here's a timeline that we're on, aka our life. And then there's these like changes we make, small changes, right? And we can either like bump up to this other timeline or we bump down. Frequencies, this is just vibrationally. So, but we stay in a pretty like small range of, and I mean this on a day-to-day, like we stay in a pretty small range of what potentials, what possibilities we're tapping into. And again, this is from an intuitive psychic perspective, and there's all sorts of quantum theories and quantum realities books out there that are awesome, and I could never remember the details to say, and I'm not a scientist. So we stay in the small range of timelines on like any given day, right? So it's like that, like, okay, like when we are like committed, all of a sudden we've been trying to go to yoga class forever and we go every so often, or sometimes we go 3 days that we said, and then all of a sudden something happens and we really get it. And all of a sudden we're either going to yoga or going to the gym and we stick with it, right? Like that is a big timeline shift because we were consistent. So we've just created new vibrations, new resonance, new frequency. So we're creating a new pathway. And those are like more like little timeline jumpings. But the key going into like actual timeline work is you have to stay present. There's feeling and then there's will and being in present time. So because we're mostly operating from the past at any given moment, right? Where like we go into a place, we've been a million times, we're just like in this like habitual kind of robotic moment, or we go to a new place, but we're like, we have all of our judgments, it's all of this, we haven't practiced mindfulness, awareness. So, before we can actually see a thing, we're like, our filters are all about our past conditioning, our judgments, all the stories, right? So, really hard to change timelines when we're in that space. You have to be in present time, meaning that you have the awareness, the intention, and the mindfulness of your being in this reality, in this moment. You're not conditioned, you're not operating out of the past, and you're not linking or just fantasy in the future. So when, and it's exciting because right now, because there's so much chaos, because there's so much change that does happen in any given moment, the possibility and potentiality to truly shift consciousness which is really shifting timelines, is so much greater than, our grandparents who might have had the same job and lived in the same town and done the same thing every day, right? So things are quicker. People live in 4 or 5 houses in a lifetime now, or as an adult, versus how many grew up in the same household for 26 years or something like that. I always moved around, so that seems, I can't even imagine that. But so there's so much more possibility of that shift. So if you're wanting to make a shift, right, you're wanting, you see that your life is on this trajectory, and you know that there's something else, there's another vibration, another frequency that you want to embody. It's so much possible, more possible now, in a way that's supported by all the chaos on the planet, which is a little counterintuitive sometimes, but because it's these timeline shifts, these energy breaks happen all the time. So the way to work with timelines is using your will, will, also known as your intention, and also with your feeling. So feeling into something. So we do this in the 6-month program, is we work with a certain timeline shift for a certain length of time, because you also need momentum, like I said before. So you have that intention to shift, you have intention and will, and then you place yourself in that feeling, right? And then you stick with it, and momentum. So if there's sticking with it while letting go, having your feeling and having your will direct it. So for example, working with a future timeline. So this, and future again being relative, because we just, as humans, we need that perspective of saying future, past, but really, it's more of the interstellar, it's stacked on each other. So when we say past lives, is it really past, or is it simultaneously reality? And we're just needing to bring more of our present self, or our soul, into present time. But that's a different topic. So when you're working at shifting timelines, so for example, if I'm working with the future self of me that already exists, that, I don't know, let's think of something. Okay, I'll just think of something. Let's say doing yoga every day, because I don't. Or working out. We'll do something I really don't do. So working out. So that future self that I'm really okay, you know what? I'm ready to get strong again, blah, 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 blah. So I am going to work with this as a meditation, but it has to, I have to feel it. I can't just visualize on the mental plane. This is where I think some of the affirmations, things get a little bit wonky. It's just visualizing just on the mental body, even if it's on the higher mental plane. You have to have your feeling body. You have to have your embodiment and the heart involved, the feeling, the emotional body. So what you want to do is you feel into that state of consciousness that you want to embody. And it can be forgiveness. It can be okay, you want to embody, you want to forgive this, but you're being authentic in your present self, and your skin boils still, or your blood boils when you think of this situation, right? But you can work with it. So going to working out example, I can feel into, okay, the Caroline that has lots of muscles. This is such a silly example, but I'm strong. I'm more in my core. I'm more upright. Okay, maybe it's not so silly. I'm this would be nice, actually. More upright. I have more energy. It's this, I'm feeling that sense of strength, inner strength, outer strength. So I feel it. I see it. I not just see it from a place of a mental place, but I'm feeling into it. And I feel what it would feel like. What would it, I really get in all my senses, what does it smell like, right? When after you work out and it's you're sweaty and it's there's a smell to it, right? So does it smell like? What is your, what do you wear, right? So you get all your senses involved. You feel into it, you link it. For me, I do something like I give an offering. So if I'm working with a certain outcome, a certain timeline shift, because I know like my consciousness is here, what consciousness I need to hold to get to where I'm going, like that's the play. I'm really working with a consciousness. So I'm feeling it bringing in, and then I make an offering to that future self. And then I let it go. So I let it go I don't like sit there the whole day, like seeing myself. I'm willing that like buff, strong Caroline to come into the picture. I see it, feel it, I let go. I also just let go. So you have your will, but you also have the letting go. But I do that consistently, right? So I don't just do it 1 or 2 days because there's a whole lot of other momentum for me not to work out. I mean, I walk my dog and go hiking, but like I'm talking like, okay, I'm working out. So there's a lot of momentum behind that's not working out. So I don't just like visualize, yay, this, okay. I do that consistently. And then it's like asking yourself, like, because you start to feel that consciousness, that timeline. This is what's called collapsing timelines or jumping timelines. So you're collapsing the distance between that timeline being a reality versus a dream. And you do that by paying attention to it, by saying hello to it. So an offering is, I do traditional offerings, so tobacco, cornmeal, or roses. And it's also, you can just like say hello to the future self from your heart. So you do that consistently, and then all of a sudden the energy of you starts to shift. And I mean, of course, that shifts the vibration, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to work out today. Right? So it's a little bit different when you're working on a physical manifestation versus a mental or emotional state of consciousness. So because I gave the example of working out, like I actually have to physically work out, but it might be peace. So if I'm like working on collapsing timelines where I truly feel peace in my body, then it's like you just sink into the feeling of peace. You sink into the feeling, and then you tap into it throughout the day. Again, not like, I'm trying to like get peace, but it's that like, oh, you'll start to feel the consciousness come closer to you, and so you're dancing in this together, and all of a sudden you realize like that the timeline that you're on is different than if you did not use your use your feeling, using your intention, and merging those together. So that really is like the gist of collapsing timelines. It sounds really simple, but when practice is profound. And again, it's different than writing affirmations. It's different than like manifest whatever. This is really about your consciousness. Oh no, did this just stop? Will someone give me a thumbs up if I'm still going? So anyways, so you just, okay, thank you. So you do this, and it's like your consciousness shifts, which means you're shifting timelines. Oh, thank you. And again, like it's simple, but it's profound. So you work with this, and you work with the consciousnesses of like what you're working with. Now, there's another, which we won't go into tonight. We don't have enough time, but there's another way of bringing in your soul energy from all other timelines and lifetimes. So when I'm doing ritual or ceremony, I always say I'm summoning myself to myself through all timelines, all dimensions, all realities. And so you're consistently calling back those different parts of self that are living in different realities on their own timelines. And that's a whole other different topic. But so for this, it's just like in conscious mind, in like conscious Caroline mind, this is how I work with timelines and work with jumping timelines or collapsing timelines. It's really profound. I think there's a couple people on here that, have worked with this in the program for a consistent amount of days that really have had huge shifts. So just stick with it and like and feel into like, not from your mind perspective of like, oh, I should work out, or, oh, I think I'd want that. You need it to come from like a deep body desire, because you need all of that that place within you, like all the emotion behind it, you know, because if it's like something we kind of like, we mentally think, it usually, we fall off. We do it for a few days and it's like, because that's not going to carry the same desire. And so this is really also when you're working with your ascension process and your awakening process. So again, I used a physical example, but this is really like when you're really working with increasing your light body and increasing your light quotient, also increasing your consciousness and your awareness. This is a powerful practice when you're inviting in energy and consciousness that's about ascension. And ascension not meaning popping out and not like going up here, embodiment, like how to be embodied in the awakening process. So, Charlene says, yes, huge shifts. So yeah, there's huge shifts when you work with this. And again, it's about embodiment and embodying the awakening process that we're all on the planet. It's just a matter of like, are we going to be conscious about it? Let's see. Beautiful. So that was a lot in a short period of time, and it was a lot more talking than I'm used to doing. But I hope that was helpful. And so tomorrow, if you liked it, we're going to have the webinar tomorrow on the golden serpent. The link is in the comments. It's going to be a really juicy time of, we'll be shifting timelines to some degree because you'll be shifting your consciousness. Again, how you shift big timelines, like when we're like timeline, we can go up here, up there, but when we have really big, like whoop, whole other timeline, it takes a lot of momentum and energy. Which is why I do a program for 6 months, because we are looking to jump timelines, but we need consistency, we need accountability, we need that, I was about to say fire, Laura. It was that fire within us to make true deep shifts that actually alter the state of our consciousness, the state of our being, so therefore the state of our lives, right? And so we can, step into a more sovereign place, and then we can help the earth make that shift, because that's another topic of like when we're looking at collective transition and collective timelines. So it's like, what big conversation there. So the webinar tomorrow night, the link is in the comments. And then also I'm doing a webinar on Saturday about walking the path of the oracle. And some of these things I'm talking about, like your clairvoyance, your clairaudience, your clairsentience, claircognizant, and like what that means. Because I say see a lot, which I'm, try to curb that, because it gives the perception that you need to see subtle energy to be a seer, right? Or to be able to have access to the subtle energy body and realms, and you don't. So we're going to go over all the different ways that we work with the subtle body. We're going to, and just like, what does it mean to walk as the path of the oracle, but from your way. So that's going to be on Saturday. That's going to be super juicy as well. Tomorrow night, the webinar, if you haven't joined, the link is in the comments. And gosh, yeah, so much more to say. So I will say more next week on Wednesday. I look forward to being with you, and you'll have a good evening.